Okay, we're continuing on the subject of healing, and what we're talking about here is how healing can come to us. We saw that healing could come through worship, and we see that healing can come by speaking the word through faith and trusting God. Another way that healing can come, and we've already talked about this before, but it can also come by a touch. If a person touches or lays hands on another person. And of course, we know that Jesus touched people and they were healed. We know that he sent his disciples out and they touched people and they were healed. But also in Mark chapter 16, it tells us that if we lay hands on the sick, they shall recover. And it said, these signs shall follow them that believe. It didn't say apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers. It simply said, these signs shall follow them that believe. Right? So, if we lay hands on somebody, through touching them, then healing can be imparted unto them. Now look here in Matthew 8 again at verses 14 and 15. It said, when Jesus would come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laid and sick of a fever. Of course, this is Peter's mother-in-law, and Jesus had come into Peter's house there, and he saw Peter's mother-in-law, and she was sick, and she had a fever. Well, verse 15 says, and he touched her hand, and the fever left her. Notice how quick that happened. He touched her hand, and the fever left her. And she arose and ministered unto them. So she went right back to work. I was working back in Oklahoma, going to Bible school and working in the ministry there. Actually, I was head of maintenance, but this particular day I was working out front and just cleaning some weeds out of a bar ditch. And along came this car, and the man was asking directions for a certain place. And so I noticed as I looked in the car, the man was driving, his wife was sitting next to him in the center, and his daughter was on the outside, he had turned the car around and brought it back, so the daughter was actually on my side of the car as I was talking to them through the window. I noticed that the daughter had perspiration, big drop of perspiration on her forehead, and I said, does she have a fever? And of course, you could see that it looked like that she had a fever. And the father said, yes, she does. And I said, would it be all right if I touched her? And so I read the scripture to the mom and dad there, and I said, when Jesus would come into Peter's house, saw Peter's wife, mother, laden sick of a fever, and he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto them. And so once I got permission to do that, I just reached in and touched her, and the fever left her immediately. Well, of course, the man asked me, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm the maintenance man here. And he said, well, who's the man? I said, well, the man is Jesus. Jesus is the healer, right? But I'm just obeying and actually duplicating what Jesus taught me in the Word. And you can see it works with his disciples today just like it did in the Bible. So, again, I want to encourage you that there's many times that you'll see that you have an opportunity to touch someone. I was in a hospital, and there was a little boy just laying down in his grandmother's lap, and I could see, that he wasn't feeling very well. So I went over and asked the grandmother, would it be all right if I touched him and prayed for him? And she said, oh, yes, she said, I'm a certain denominational Christian, and I said, okay. So I reached down and touched this little boy and prayed for him, and in a few minutes, he jumped up and he's running around the room, and you could tell he was completely healed. Well, that just shows you how quickly these kind of things can happen. I was in another restaurant, and I heard a little baby choking. It was a restaurant where you buy sandwiches and ice cream. And so the little baby apparently was kind of choking on some ice cream. And I went over, and again, the grandmother was sitting there with the baby, with a little child. And I said, would it be all right if I touched this child and prayed for him? She said, oh yeah, well, turned out that this grandmother was, a believer and a spirit-filled believer. And I actually recognized her from a certain church. But anyway, I just reached over and touched this child, and immediately the choking stopped and the baby was fine. Now, I'm just trying to show you that what Jesus did in the Bible, and He's asking us to do out here. So you and I can touch people and they can be healed. That's another way of receiving healing from God. Amen.